Hello everyone and welcome to the whiskey channel called Selective Malts. My name is Rajiv and I am glad to share my journey of whiskey tasting and my passion of whiskey with everyone here today. I'm going to start this conversation off by telling you why I've chosen the whiskey I've chosen today. The whiskey I've chosen today is called Lagavulin 16. Now before I go any further, there's a lot of confusion about how to pronounce the name Lagavulin, even though it's spelled Lagavulin and many people still mess it up, but it's very simple. It's pronounced Lagavulin. An interesting story about the name is that it's actually from a distillery which is also called the Lagavulin distillery, and that distillery is located in the Bay of Lagavulin, which is where it's probably got its name from. Another important fact to remember when we're talking about Lagavulin is that it is not the oldest distillery in the Isle of Islay. Now, interesting fact about the Isle of Islay, it's a very small isle off the coast of Scotland, and the beauty of the Isle of Islay is that it is known for its characteristically peaty whiskies. Now, other whiskies that come from the Isle of Islay include Bowmore, Laphroaig, and of course Lagavulin. Now let's talk about this whiskey in particular. This is one of the hallmark whiskies that comes from the Isle of Islay. Now, even though this is not the oldest distillery in the Isle of Islay, that credit goes to Bowmore. Another important fact I want to talk about when I talk about Lagavulin is that the founder of the distillery, or one of the original founders of the distillery of Lagavulin, Peter Mackey, is also responsible for the success of another whiskey that comes from its neighboring area, and that whiskey is Laphroaig. So they have a big and long shared history, both these whiskeys do, and that's something that we'll probably pick up on when we do more videos on Laphroaig and other Islay whiskies as well. Now I'm going to go directly into discussing the bottle. Let's get into looking at the bottle up close and then going into pouring the in into my Glencairn glass. Most importantly, let's talk about the external experience of the bottle. First things first, if you've noticed, the bottle is got a very proud representation of its roots, which is from the Isle of Islay, which is right there. It's got the words Islay etched on it. In addition, it's also got the year in which the distillery was founded, which was 1816. Another interesting fact, it is actually 43% alcohol by volume. For those of you who've always wondered what that means, if you pour out 100 ml from this bottle, 43% of that would be alcohol. So this is not all alcohol, if you ever wondered. There is only 43% alcohol in the entirety of the bottle. Now moving on, let's get that satisfying pop and let's pour some of it into the Glencairn glass. You can see the distinctive amber color that it talks about in the website and also on its tasting notes. Now, unlike other whiskies, it is slightly cloudy, but I think that actually adds to the character of the whiskey and makes it look a little more distinctive and gives you an idea of the peatiness that is going to go along with this whiskey. Let's put that cork back in. And let's talk about the tasting next. Now let's get right down to tasting the whiskey. Now what I'm going to do whenever I taste a whiskey is I'm going to do some research for you guys and come up with what the official tasting notes of the whiskey are. Now the appearance, as I discussed earlier, it says deep amber gold, which is pretty accurate, I guess. It is deep amber gold. Now it says the nosing, and that is when you smell the whiskey. The nosing is intensely flavored peat smoke with iodine and seaweed and a rich, deep sweetness. So let's go with the nosing. Now you can definitely get the peat smell, and yes, there is a hint of iodine there. Unfortunately, not all of us would have actually gone to a chemistry lab and smelled iodine, but it's got a very distinctive smell, and this does have traces of the smell. Now, before I go into the palate, let me read out what the website says about the palate. So it says it's got a dry peat smoke filling the palate with a gentle but strong sweetness, followed by sea and salt with touches of wood. So here we go. Cheers. Yeah, the smoke is evident. The strong sweetness is there. It's so subtle. It's complex, but it's so subtle at the same time. And the saltiness, there is certain amount of saltiness here, but I don't think it's as salty as some other whiskeys that I've tasted so far. So I wouldn't say that it's got a lot of saltiness going with it. In terms of the finish, the description is a long, elegant, peat-filled finish with lots of salt and seaweed. Unfortunately, the salt and seaweed I can't speak much for, but yes, there's definitely a peat-filled, elegant finish, and I would recommend that if you want to go for a peaty whiskey, like I said. So definitely great on the peatiness of the whiskey. Let's talk a little bit more about the complexity of the whiskey now. It is definitely a complex whiskey. It's 16 years old, matured. There is definitely a complex flavor. The nosing is different, the palate is different, and the finish is different. So I've decided to rate my whiskeys on 5 points, which is appearance, aroma, palate, finish, and of course the final thing is the overall impressions. Now, of course, every section has a different scoring. For example, appearance is on a scale of 1 to 10. I would give this whiskey a solid 7 on appearance. The bottling is iconic. The whiskey itself is clear looking, and of course it is overall a very, very recognizable whiskey from the Isle of Islay. So 7 on 10 for the appearance. In terms of the aroma and the overall nosing experience, if anyone were to smell a peaty whiskey, I think anyone who's worth their salt in the whiskey business, Lagavulin represents what is an iconic peaty smelling whiskey. So I'll give it a solid 15 out of 20 in terms of the nose. Let's move on to the palate. I think on the palate score, I would give it a solid 25 on 30. It is beautifully balanced yet complex, and it is a great iconic peaty whiskey from the Isle of Islay. And finally, I want to talk about the finish of this. It is superb. There is no bitter aftertaste. There is a lingering aroma which really does refresh your palate. I would give this a 15 on 20 in terms of the aroma. And finally, overall impressions, that includes the bottling, the aroma, and of course the presentability in terms of how good a whiskey it is. I think I would say that this is another 18 on 20. It is very, very good, very well presented, and it's definitely something that you can give as a gift to someone who likes their peaty whiskey. In fact, I would not be surprised if they don't already have a bottle of Lagavulin 16 if they like peaty whiskeys. Overall, I think we've reached a solid score of 80 out of 100, which makes this an excellent whiskey with superior taste, and I stand by that rating. If you like what you saw today and you want to see more, or if you have a few suggestions, do hit the like button, do subscribe to my channel, and leave me a comment if you want me to review any more whiskeys. This is Rajiv signing out for the day.